If you know much about the kind of games I consume, say Redout, Company of Heroes 2, Distance, Superhot, Dead by Daylight, Sheltered, Enter the Gungeon, Broforce, and most notably here Risk of Rain, you'll notice a subtle trend. While it may not be readily apparent, these games aren't the easiest. They're very much about practice and failure until you overcome the challenge. Specifically Broforce, Enter the Gungeon, Death Road to Canada, Superhot, and of course, relevant here, Risk of Rain. Most of these games are 2D, and in an 8-bit or 16-bit art style. This might be because it helps to draw more focus onto the gameplay than the visuals, while also helping it remain uncluttered and clear. As stated, most of these games are difficult, and cluttered controls or a cluttered foreground would make some of these borderline unplayable. They're already hard enough when you can see everything. There might be a lot more to why a game uses an 8-bit or a 16-bit graphical style, and it's definitely not for me to tell you exactly why. I can only assume some of the reasons the choice was made, but that's for later. My main point here is it's easier to focus on the important things without getting too caught up in things that hardly matter. Difficult games are generally fun, at least in gameplay. Risk of Rain is no exception, even if it is a bit simplistic. It is relatively replayable and isn't the hardest thing to do, at least on easy difficulty. I'm not saying easy isn't hard, it has its moments. I did beat the game on easy mode, but that's because normal was far too unforgiving and cruel. But it definitely felt like I was cheating the game half the time. The difficulty in this game is done in a rather interesting way. The AI spawning the enemies is given points, which it then uses to spawn the mobs. The tougher the mob, the higher the cost, and the higher the difficulty, the more points the AI is allowed. This creates a gameplay loop, and is where gameplay becomes my focus for now. Gameplay is of course rather simple. You use the arrow keys to move, Z, X, C, and V to attack or use abilities. The controls are fine, but space being jump was absolutely egregious. I had to remap it to the up arrow key, which works a lot better for me. The reason it's so bad is because it's too far from the arrow keys, and your other hand is on the ability keys. And in a 2D game like this, the up arrow would be much more natural. It just doesn't work, and I have no idea what they were thinking. As you kill monsters, you gain experience and gold. Leveling up increases your damage and health, nothing groundbreaking. However, you can spend gold opening larger crates, which give you a randomized item, which can have various effects. These effects range from boosts to speed, health, jumping, attack speed, and damage, as well as bonus effects like double jumping, likelihood of rewards for killing tougher monsters, or launching a heat-seeking missile when attacking. There are lots of items, and their effects can stack when you collect more of them. Other than crates, there are 3 containers where you can pick between 3 items. You only get to pick one. After that, the other 2 items disappear. The visual stylization is rather nice, a 32-bit look with darker colors. This, as well as the player character taking up very little space in the center of the screen, complements the tone by showing the feeling of being alone in a dark, hostile environment. The music, however, doesn't contribute well to this. I really like the soundtrack, but I just don't find it to fit the tone. It feels too adventurous or exploration related, trying to fit the gameplay as well as the style. It does sound nice, but a darker feel in the score would greatly enhance the tone, working in tandem with the storytelling and visual styling. A few of the tracks are just fine and fit almost perfectly, namely Coalescence, the track for the final level. To really describe why it doesn't fit, I'll compare it to a game with a very similar target mood and tone, They Breathe. A recent favorite of mine, They Breathe focuses on a frog known as Glenn, who explores a lake and finds a dark secret. The general tone is dark, foreboding, and uncomfortable, with an increasing intensity the deeper you go into the lake. Here are a few examples from each game. As it is, they will fit right in on my Spotify playlist. All of the levels look nice and are visually distinct. Enemies are in the foreground, with you, and the background is in the background. It's all where it's supposed to be, which keeps everything visually clear. You'll never mix up an enemy for background decoration and vice versa. It's the great visual design that Risk of Rain does rather well. It isn't messy or confusing. Enemies are distinct from each other and the background, preventing confusion. There are quite a few enemies you can encounter, each varied in appearance, but depending on your hero, there isn't exactly a variety in how you approach them. For example, the golems are taller than a block, so all you need to do is stand on a slightly higher area than them and spam penetrating abilities until they die. This works because there's no way for them to hit you. They don't have the range, nor can they climb up to chase you. This goes for all mobs taller than one block. The only exception is bosses, but it depends on which one it is. This greatly adds to the feeling you're cheating the game. It's not challenging to fight these enemies, it's tedious. Little skill is required when the enemies are just standing there doing nothing. Overall, the mobs have great visual variety, but the gameplay variety leaves much to be desired. It is a 2D game, but that's little excuse for a decent number of the mobs being dealt with in the exact same way. Being a difficult game, you probably won't be surprised to hear you die a lot in Risk of Rain, but the game doesn't treat it well at all. When you die in Risk of Rain, the game decides it'd be a good idea to mock you. This may coincide with the tone of a hopelessly oppressive planet bent on making sure you do not survive, but you don't have to mock the player like that. It's like when you get destroyed in RTS or something, and the enemy says, GG, easy. The game is hard, it's meant to be hard, so the game has little reason to mock you for it. That just makes the game less enjoyable. If you're going to be mocked by the game for playing the game, why would you play it? The mocking would be fine, I guess. It fits the tone and atmosphere, but I find it unforgivable because of another thing this game decided to do. Victory is hollow if it means little. Yes, we may have won, but winning means little if nothing actually happens afterwards. This has been a problem in many games. After you beat the final boss, advance past the final stage, declare victory over whatever was holding you back, what should you get? A cutscene? A quote? A cliffhanger or dialogue? Again, They Breathe handled this extremely well. The very end is one of the most powerful and rewarding cutscenes in a game I have experienced, as after going through the horrors of the lake and defeating the final boss, Glenn swims back up to the top, where waiting for him are the frogs he saved during his adventure. It's a powerful moment, as Glenn has experienced horrific things, and after it's done, he swims upwards to the various levels until he resurfaces. At this point, the experience only a memory. This is a powerful moment that doesn't need words to have an impact on the player. The lack of dialogue, other than credits, makes this ending very symbolic and allows for multiple different interpretations. The ending lets you imagine what the player character must be feeling, which has caused me to think about it more than I would if they just told me. Risk of Rain simply tells you what happened without telling you entirely what it means. Half the endgame quotes sound dumb and just generally feel sad. Part of what made the ending of They Breathe so powerful was the undertones of never forgetting what happened, never being the same again, but being mostly overshadowed by the hope, the escape, the end of the nightmare. While you could say Risk of Rain's ending was thematically correct, that's not wrong. But it's not right either. While the game never really lets up and always takes jabs at you, I think the 80-minute play session I spent without dying at least warrants more than, oh, your character is dead inside now, lol, which it pretty much is for every single character. The ending feels like you earned a car, then you just got the hood. The game underdelivers, which shines the light on all the other problems. I neglected to mention it before, but the gameplay has tons of issues. It feels rather unpolished to me. Let me explain. Firstly, there wasn't a difficulty that felt balanced. Normal was punishing to the point where it was just cruel and unfair, but while easy was more fair, it was too easy. Neither difficulty really felt balanced. It was either too far one way or the other. Normal was too cruel, while easy was far too easy most times. The game also has 12 characters for the player to choose from. None of the characters really have any abilities in common. For example, the commando and sniper can both dodge roll, but the sniper rolls backwards while the commando rolls forwards. There is no real consistency between any two characters, so trying to pick up a second one can feel extremely daunting. It gets worse when one class is a gimmick that completely interrupts the flow. Back to the sniper. The sniper has a rifle that you need to manually reload after firing. Every single time. If you time it right, your next shot will get a large boost. If you get it decently okay, it'll have a smaller boost, and if you miss those, you get no damage buff. This incentivizes taking time to get that buff, even if you're being chased. This way, you can at least pop a shot off, then dodge roll away again. This is fine, I guess. It's somewhat creative, but the game doesn't really give you the tools to get out of situations very well. At least, against overwhelming hordes of enemies. And speaking of enemies, the game spawns a lot of them. How many is a lot? Way too many to realistically deal with without running away half the time, only to kill them just before the next wave arrives. It feels hard to get much done. Then, when you find the teleporter, you activate it, and a boss battle occurs. Oh, did you think we'd decrease the spawning enemies so you can deal with this huge fiery worm bursting from the ground that follows you everywhere? Nope, we'll just spawn more, causing you to have no idea what to do. If you pause and shoot, you die as they all approach you from behind. Then the magma worm bursts from beneath you. But if you run, you can't stop all the enemies from attacking you. Then the magma worm activates its super special hit scan abilities and you die. And if you somehow escape, then we just spawn more enemies until you can't possibly run or fight from them all and you die. But if you had that 120 items that you can only get from randomized chests, then you could have been fine. Oh, also, if you try making sure you get every item or drop, the boss gets tougher. So hurry up! I understand the appeal of having a game that's more difficult the longer you take, but the way they implemented it just doesn't work. Part of the concept for the game was not being able to blame the game for dying. At one point, I needed to use a trampoline found in most levels, but I couldn't reach the one place I needed to go. The game never explained holding the jump button lets you jump higher on those things, so I died. I don't know how I was expected to know that. I don't know if it's because I mostly played on easy, or was so full of crap I just couldn't take it anymore. The difference between easy and normal is really just how much you want the game to hate you. But I completely missed an entire 2 settings? I think I only missed one, but for the last 2 stages before the final stage, I kept getting the same ones. I have yet to see the magma barracks and its associated boss. The final boss, Providence, can be easily beaten if you get the air support use item and about 10 miscellaneous drones, especially if you have the fireworks item. This allows you to do tons of damage without doing anything, but he'd essentially be impossible otherwise, as the game throws ton of unfair crap at you. The horrible ending is even worse, considering the song before the final boss, Coalescence, is rather slow, and has a dreamlike or surreal feeling. This perfectly sets up for an ending similar to They Breathe, part of the shock in coming back from the event being that it's over in a day or two, when it felt like a week. Almost dreamlike. The music is well done, but the game wastes its presented tone. Right after everything in the ending, you hear the teleporter go off, possibly insinuating the game could begin again. I've played an 80-minute session with this character without dying. I don't want him to go through this again. I don't care about the style the game was made in. The ending sucks, and the gameplay feels at least mildly unpolished and very unfair. Just because the game thought, hey, you know what? Screw you. And that just isn't fun. Risk of Rain is fun for the first playthrough. Gameplay flaws might not be noticed immediately, but they will definitely feel unfair. The gameplay could use some tightening, the difficulty could use some fairness, and if they're going to mock me every time I die, I expect something better than, your guys hurt forever now. It feels like the player versus the game, and the game always gets the last laugh. If you enjoy playing a game that makes it feel like it hates you, you'll love this one. Personally, I'd prefer something that doesn't fight to impair my progress, like Broforce or Enter the Gungeon. While many of these issues aren't really huge or bad on their own, besides the ending, it's the culmination of all of them that really breaks the experience for me. The game doesn't just have a bad ending. It's ruthlessly punishing, mocking, unfair, buggy, and a bit too long, which makes the crappy ending just look like another concession of a game that needed another few months. And currently has a sequel. 4 out of 10. Unfinished product. I'd like to give some special thanks real quick to Drowzy and Alan10110 for proofreading the script. It wouldn't have been anything like it is right now. I mean, it would have been kinda close, but they helped find a lot of the errors and problems and help me improve essentially everything. So I'd like to thank them. I'll put links in the description for their stuff. So thank you, you two, for that, and thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you liked it. Remember, if you're thirsty, drink water.